and some people, might say that my job plan has a very pragmatic sort of engineering focus to it in terms of how I think about things. That's all.
Yeah, yeah. And
Yeah,
since you're
yeah,
a marketer, Holly, like this, we were really trying to lean into the sort of the strategic, thoughtful approach, and so we were trying to brand it with that. But no, it's for everyone. It's not specific to any one
yeah,
audience.
yeah. That's
Awesome.
our attempt at just being, cute. Yes.
So
All
we're
right.
just past 6:05. So if you want to
Yeah.
get started, I mean the
Yes.
first little
I
couple
think.
are a recap anyway. So folks that jump in will hopefully come in at the right time.
Yeah, I think I will. So welcome. Thank you everybody for joining. I really appreciate it. We're looking forward to getting into part two of the conversation today. And just let you know is I really like to make this interactive, and I like it to be, more of a workshop than it is a presentation. I have some content here, obviously, that I'm going to share with you, but I want you to feel free to ask questions either by raising your hand or typing something into the chat. And I'd like to respond to those questions in real time as opposed to waiting to the end, right? I find it's much more interactive, much more engaging, and much more beneficial if we, deal with those questions as they come up. And I'm happy to, pivot and address. And if there's something I'm not, addressing or something that you're looking for, please, let me know, and so that I have an opportunity to, respond to any questions or concerns as we're going through the content this evening.
Yeah, I know. Honestly, last time we did this, we had a lot of great questions and a lot of great conversation that
Yeah,
wasn't necessarily directed to the content, but people were just asking things that they were wondering about. So that was awesome.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. So uh, this, I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on this. I just put this in here for consistency in terms of my background. Been working in an industry for 30 plus years in the private sector primarily. But at that same time, I've always been a informal career coach and supporter to my colleagues in terms of job hunts and job searches and so forth. And that experience has allowed me to develop my 5-step plan that I'm going to share with you shortly. And I have what I say the badge of honor in terms of over my 30-year career. I've had to seek new jobs, 9 times, and 6 of those times were due to unexpected layoffs. So I'm very empathetic to where many job seekers are today, because I've been through that process, as you can see, more times than most. And I'm hoping some of my insights and lessons learned I can share and be a benefit to everyone here. Sure. Was there a question there? Okay. All right, cool. So summary, my 5-step plan, as you can see here. I'd like to keep it real simple. The first part, we dealt with steps 1 through 3, and today we're going to dive in a little bit in terms of steps 4 and 5. But I think it's worth repeating, and it's worth sharing that the first and hardest step is about getting your mind right? About having the right attitude, dealing with some of the history, some of the concerns, some of the feelings that you're experiencing in terms of rejection, depression, failure, unworthiness due to an unexpected layoff, right? And working on changing that mindset, because that proactive attitude, that positive attitude, is going to make all the difference in how you're successful with your job search, all right? So that's getting your mind right, critical. Get good. This is what I mean by improving yourself, taking this time in terms of when you're in between jobs to develop new skills, get certifications, investigate and research areas that have always been of personal interest, right? And that ultimately is building your marketability, for the job search. Get known. This is the marketing step. This is where, you are the product. That's the reality in terms of a job search, right? And you need to develop a strategy, develop a plan, and how you market yourself market your product, market your skills, market your value to potential, hiring managers, right? And what's really critical, and that's why it's in bold around this marketing step, is networking. And I shared some statistics, with folks last time, and I'll briefly repeat it today, is two things: the 75% rule, i.e., 75% of job seekers secure their next position of, relative, comparable, desirable role, okay, through their network or through networking, right? The approach of submitting applications online, hundreds of times in some cases, right? That only is successful maybe 10% or less of the time, right? So it really is a fruitless exercise from my perspective, right? So that's number one. Number two, there is this hidden job market that exists out there, jobs that are not posted, jobs that are not promoted, jobs that are not, sitting on LinkedIn, that are opportunities. And the only way to get, what's again, a scary statistic around that, 75% of that hidden job market, right, is the only way to get to that is via networking. So that's, again, kind of what reinforces the importance of networking. Anyway, and then
a question from
go ahead.
Camilla.
For sure. Oh, was there a question?
I had a question about the hidden job market because I was just on a webinar the other day, and they said that the data about that is actually not what it's been perceived as for many years, that it's more like 25% of the jobs are hidden job market versus what's been talked about with it being like 70 or more. I'm curious, just in your experience, where do you fall in terms of, is that as much of an opportunity anymore?
Well, okay, let me put it this way. I'm comfortable, and that is a bit of a gap in terms of how size, and it's kind of hard because it's a hidden market. It's kind of hard to come up with that quantifiable metric, whether it's 25% or 75%. But my point is really the 75% is really the success rate that networking has in terms of attacking that hidden job market is really the point. So regardless of what the size might be, right, the networking activity is critical in terms of penetrating that hidden market.
Gotcha. Okay.
Cool. Was there another question? All right. Great. All right. Let's move on then. Okay. This is just touched off in terms of what I just said, so I don't need to repeat it. But this was the slide, just for continuity, what we addressed a lot in terms of last session, the importance of marketing and the job search plan. And this document, this is a sample job search plan in terms of that roadmap, that roadmap, right, is critical. And now we're going to talk about execution against your marketing plan, right? And what activities you need to focus on in order to be successful. So assuming you have your roadmap, you have your marketing plan, let's talk about, a little bit here. Now, what you'll find on your focus in terms of today's discussion is a lot about activity, a lot about tactical tasks, a lot about making the best use of your time, right? And focusing, again, on those tasks and those activities that are going to be most fruitful for you in terms of developing the new opportunities and finding that next great position. So one of the things that GigHQ is really good at is tracking your activity. As you can see, from this screenshot here, Asnane provided us this example in terms of one of the roles, Director of Product Management, that this job seeker is looking after, right? It keeps a copy of their resume and cover letter, which should be tailored. Again, I'll reinforce this. It should be tailored for each opportunity. You may have a base resume, right, with all your content, and you may have a basic cover letter, but I implore you that each one, whatever opportunity that you're looking at, you need to make sure you tailor both the resume and the cover letter to match the specifications, to match the requirements that the hiring manager has articulated in that job posting. That's really critical. And we'll talk more about that in a bit. But what also it does is, highlights, and it keeps a timeline of your activities. And this is good in terms of both giving, reinforcing that accountability, right? And reminding you, and we'll talk about this towards the end, about the importance of having a plan. That, unfortunately, a lot of job seekers, their frustration and their extended time in that search, almost, in a great majority of the time, comes down to the fact that they lack a plan. They lack the organization. They lack what I talk about in terms of a pragmatic approach, and they lack the focus and the targeting, right? And often, unfortunately, spend a lot of their time wasted spinning their wheels on activities that are not going to bear good results for them, right? So that's what I want to kind of reinforce. That's the engineering part of me coming out.
And just to quickly add to that, I mean, so for us, we really think of the job search, as Bryon was mentioning, like you have to have a plan and you're really selling yourself to the company. And so the way we've built the platform is really a CRM for job seekers, right? So you apply and you create a lead in the system, and how do we help you nurture yourself to a close one, to an offer letter on the other end. And so that's kind of the entirety of it. But we won't dig into too much of that now. If you all have questions about that, definitely reach out and I can share some more.
Sure. Okay. So one of the things, and one of my favorite topics, is talking about strategic applications or strategic applying in terms of your process. Again, and personally, I find it, it's frustrating for me as a career coach and frustrating for the job seeker, is doing blind applications, right? Just, endlessly applying to jobs, this sort of, spray and pray approach, to seeking out opportunities. It just leads to a lot of frustration, a lot of, endless hours, and it's a tedious type activity, right? And I really encourage folks to pivot from that type of approach to what I describe, or what I like to call, strategic applications, right? And what I mean by that is that going back to your marketing plan, your job search plan, you identify target companies, okay? You identify industries, companies, areas that you want to work in, that fit well for your skill set, fit well for your interests, right? And you focus on those, right? And what you do is a couple of things. You try to, as you build your network, you try to make connections in these target companies. You follow them in LinkedIn, you follow them online. You look at your network and look for second or third level connections that might be related to folks that are in that organization, right? And leverage your first level connections to maybe help provide an introduction, or an introduction, or an email, or an opportunity to have an informational interview with somebody within the organization, or somebody who is in the career role that you're desiring to seek, right? You're not, going to speak to them necessarily for a job or anything like that. You're looking to benefit from their experience in terms of, whether it's a product marketing manager or somebody like that within your target company, or a related company. Maybe it's a competitor to your target company. Any way that you can focus, right, your applications and focus your search for opportunities in those targets, it's going to help you, be more successful. Because one of the things I often tell and recommend is that do not submit applications blindly. Do not submit applications to opportunities where you have not identified a connection, okay? Because what you want to do is you want to be able to jump the line in terms of the ATS screening. And the best way to do that is to have identified a connection, okay? Or identified the hiring manager, within that organization, that you can message that person, Leverage that person and let them know that you've submitted, an application to that particular opportunity and very interested in getting their full consideration, or if it's a referral, getting their support, right? And they will help you jump that line and help you jump sort of the ATS, automated screening that happens more than not. But Hasnain, you wanted to make a comment?
I was just gonna ask is if you would like to dive into briefly your how you feel about Easy Apply on LinkedIn.
Yes, yes, I have that bias. That is very true. I know I mean, it's fine to use LinkedIn as a job board, but personally, I never apply to a job or an opportunity via LinkedIn or use the Easy Apply on LinkedIn. I always go directly to that company website and apply to the job there, right? It makes a difference, believe me. And you leverage when you're going through that application process, you leverage, again, your connections that you've made when you're submitting that app directly. Just so I won't preach on that any further, but yes, I will share that. All right. So sorry, was there a question? Oh, so Crystal. Crystal, I'm not sure I fully agree with you in terms of that comment, right? Because yes, companies leverage LinkedIn and so forth, and some of it may be a timing thing, but I would be very, very surprised that companies, it might be a very small minority that would only post their, those job opportunities on LinkedIn and not have them on their website. That is it. That seems to me, from a company, from an organizational perspective, and I've been a hiring manager many, many times, that almost seems counterproductive to do that.
Well, if I could just say, I did find 2 roles that's exactly what they did.
Really?
Yep.
Interesting. What was this organization? If you're
I would have to go look in my book of things I've tracked, but I ultimately ended up not applying, but not because of that. I ultimately not applied because I just really wasn't a good match for the role. But I spent about an hour trying to hunt down that role on their site, and it was nowhere to be found. And that happened the second time. 2 different companies. And these are large companies. These aren't small mom and pop places. Just literally couldn't find the role on their website anywhere.
Interesting. I don't know. I'm wondering, and I don't want to get into conspiracy theories or anything like that, but I'm wondering if the reality of the role had expired, and that's why it wasn't on their company website, but maybe LinkedIn wasn't as up to date in terms of the opportunity being real or available.
The LinkedIn opportunity was a brand new listing. I don't look at anything unless it's within the last week. And actually, to be honest, anything that's within the last 5 days.
Right.
Just because the number of people that jump on an opportunity, if it's been 2 weeks, you can forget about it. You're way at the bottom of the pile of thousands of candidates.
Yeah, but you've inadvertently raised another point. That's why I always insist in terms of making that connection, because the timing of when you apply becomes less of an issue if you've made a connection into the organization, whether it's with like a referral or a hiring manager or the HR recruiter and so forth. And that's what that's been my experience in terms of the number of jobs that I've applied through these various hunts. So that's why you don't want to be caught in, the hordes that are applying via LinkedIn and so forth. If you have a way to jump the line, and I say making that connection is a very effective way to do that, that's going to increase your probability of getting to that next step in terms of an interview. So yes, personalizing it, doing the research to find who the hiring manager is, researching the company, joining maybe professional associations that are relevant to the roles that you're looking for, and constantly building your LinkedIn network, because that will give you more opportunities to reach out to second level and third level, and a greater likelihood that they may be connected to the organization that you're seeking to join. And so just a little thing, I don't know if people, are aware of this, but there's kind of like two stratas in LinkedIn, whether you have 500 plus connections or less, right? If you have less, then it shows the exact number and it kind of tracks it. But once you've exceeded that 500 mark, right, you then are moved into the newer strata in terms of somebody who is more active or more well connected from the LinkedIn algorithm perspective. So making it over that hurdle does help you in terms of recruiter searching and raises your, your placement in the search algorithms and so forth. So just something to kind of keep in mind from a LinkedIn usage perspective. Okay. Is there any other questions?
No, I don't think so.
Alrighty. All right. So talking about the get known, and I wanted to touch a little bit on AI in terms of helping you and supporting you. And everybody's using it, and it's undeniable in terms of the potential benefits, but it takes a little bit of crafting, okay, in order to ensure that you are using it correctly and not fully relying on it, because now that it has become almost ubiquitous, right? Now hiring managers and recruiters and so forth are now able to kind of differentiate and distinguish between something that was prepared, right, via yourself, an individual in your own voice, versus something that was prepared in AI, because AI has this tendency to be very repetitive in the language and the recommendations that it's using. So just a caution around that. Use it as a base, use it as a start, but always, look to tweak it with your own voice in terms of the cover letters, particularly, as well as maybe some of the wording and some of the accomplishments you tout within your resume, because you don't want to get caught in AI hallucinating things and letting that slip through. So just a caution there. But getting into how I've used it effectively in the job search is in terms of applying for jobs. If it's active, you can post a URL for that job. You attach your resume. You can ask it to give you a score in terms of how well you're matching to that job position. And typically, ATS systems in general, and me use it as a rule of thumb. If you're getting ideally you want to get like an 85% match or higher in terms of meeting the criteria for that resume in terms of the skill set, right? You can also, again, leverage LinkedIn this way in terms of if you do that work in identifying the hiring manager or identifying the management chain that you think would be in the hiring committee, you can use use AI to help develop a compelling and persuasive cover letter for that job relative to the individual that you have identified. And it's been very, very helpful for me in that perspective. You can have it generate interview questions, and then you can also have it generate responses to those interview questions based on your resume, using the STAR method format. Is everybody familiar with the STAR method in terms of that?
Yeah.
Okay, great. Okay. And then on the second tip, I will get into this a little bit more, is that when you have an opportunity to interview to ask questions, the questions that you ask can also be very revealing, and use them to show your insight, show that you've researched the company, show that you've thought deeply about the role and about the position, and you have a very focused, results-oriented, solution-oriented type position. Because at the end of the day, each job, that the hiring manager posts, right, they're trying to solve a problem. And if you can show that your orientation is towards providing value in solving that critical problem, right, obviously that's going to be appealing to the hiring manager and the hiring committee. So getting to that is critical, because it's often not very clear, right, in the job descriptions or the job postings. But if you get to that interview conversation stage and have a conversation with the hiring manager or the recruiter or the hiring committee, you can typically get to the nut of what is the issue they're really concerned about and really worried about. And I'll show you a couple of ways that you can do that. Okay.
Brian, just really quick
But
before
sure.
we move on, there's a couple of questions in chat. Rashil, do you mind
Sure.
if you have it open just to share?
Yeah, we had two questions come up.
Okay.
On the page before, you included a brag sheet. So one of our audience was asking what a brag sheet kind of looks like. What it is.
Yeah, sure. A brag sheet, just a little bit of terminology and semantics really, is that AI, I've found, because you can tweak it and you can change the tone in terms of how you want it to sound, whether it's more professional, more casual, and so forth, it can take your resume and pull out the key accomplishments, the key highlights that you want to promote, to that particular hiring manager or to that hiring committee. So, a little bit of bragging, what are the key things that rise to the top? What are the critical, most impactful things in terms of that you have done, right? That you should be using to appeal to that hiring manager, right? And an elevator pitch is just a very abbreviated 30-second version of that talking, it just talks about the elevator pitch is introducing who you are, what you do, what value you bring, right? They might articulate 2 or 3 skills and so forth, and why would somebody want to hire you, right? Those are the things that
Does that answer your question?
Sure.
Jalima, sorry. Does that answer your question? Okay, cool. And then we had one more question on this page. Just your thoughts and your opinions on like some of the more AI assistance tools where like in Gemini, you can create a specific gem that can help you tailor your resume, or you can give it like specific instructions and then it would go and make those like adjustments to your resume and stuff like that. What are your thoughts on those tools?
Yeah, I'm very supportive and very positive of them. I mean, my one caution about this, right, in terms of using AI, it really comes down to all about the prompts, how specific you are in terms of directing what you want the AI tool to do, right? The more specific you are, the more clear you can make your request, right? The better response you're going to get from that tool. It's all about them. That's why, for example, I asked them, I had them had AI rewrite my cover letter, which was very focused to the private sector, okay? And I was making a pivot to the public sector. So I asked them to write a compelling and persuasive cover letter that emphasized the mission of the organization versus the private sector, which was emphasizing revenue and sales and profitability, right? So it's giving it that type of direction, right? Very specific in terms of what you're looking for, making it compelling, making it persuasive, and including as much information as you can will help it generate better results.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. The more details that you can include, the better it can understand what you want.
Right.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
I think Hasnain had one more point, and then
Yeah, just to share, I mean, I 100% agree, and it's very much kind of the old adage with computers, right? Is if you put garbage in, you'll get garbage out. So
Right.
the better information you feed it, the better it will do. And I think that it's also true with AI. Is a lot of us that have been new to AI and started using AI, and were forced to start using AI because of being in a job search, have struggled with something as simple as, oh, this is a job. Here's my resume. Make it better. Which, if you ask a bad question, you're going to get a bad answer. Like that's just the truth of it.
That's
right?
not specific enough.
And so,
absolutely.
not to kind of push kind of what we're working on, but I recommend going to our website on www.GigHQ.ai, and under the free tools section, we have a few variations of these tools. The resume tool, by the way, is a very, very well thought out resume tool. We've spoken to a lot of recruiters, a lot of folks like Bryon, and really done the work on creating a prompt that gives you like a really, really good output. So if you're gonna try ChatGPT, try ours. I would love to get feedback and hear what you think. But again, yeah, it's a matter of resume, cover letter, preparing for interviews, trying to figure out who to contact. If you ask a good question, you will, and you provided good background information, you will get a better answer. That's just the
Yeah.
truth of AI.
So Crystal, you're absolutely right. You ask a general question, you'll get a made up answer. AI will hallucinate. And the other point I think Holly was raised, yes, on a brag sheet, metrics are great. And yeah, typically you would, because a brag sheet's a little bit longer. If you can, work in some metrics. And I talk about this, I didn't get into resumes today because I could spend a whole hour just talking about resumes. But one of the key things is in your resume, it's always should be every bullet point for every role that you work in should be accomplishment oriented. It should be stating what you achieved, what your result was, in terms of that position. And if you can quantify it, right, all the better, because people are human. And what I like to say, human beings, numbers are sticky. So numbers, metrics, quantifications stay in the mind. They add credibility to your statement, right? And they stay in the mind of the reader. So whenever you can quantify and use metrics, I absolutely, encourage you to do that. Things like, increase sales by 25%, reduce turnaround time by 15%. Those types of things in terms of quantified achievements are the things that you want to make sure you're stating in your resume for each one of your roles. Okay. All right, let's continue on. All right, so I'm going to talk a little bit about interviewing here because it's been kind of top of mind for many of the job clubs that I've been speaking to and so forth. So just as a preparation from a hiring manager perspective, these are some key types of behavioral oriented interview questions that you may or may not get. But if you're well prepared to answer these type of questions, you might you'll be in good stead in terms of the spin-offs or the moderations or the variations of these sort of thing. Because the point is they're looking at your accomplishments, right? Hiring managers are looking at what you have achieved, because that at the end of the day, what the resume is doing, right, is saying, here are all the great things I've done for my past companies, right? And Mr. or Mrs. Hiring Manager, I can do this and more for you, right? That is the idea. The resume, I'd like to say, is the movie trailer, not the whole movie, right? You want to include information that's going to be attractive and interesting to a hiring manager, because the purpose of your resume is to get you to that interview, right? And in the interview, you're likely going to get, the drill down in terms of, okay, how do you work and what results have you generated, from the work that you've done in these other organizations, right? That's why a great question is, what professional accomplishment are you most proud of and why, right? That's why the contrary to that almost is like, okay, tell me about a challenging project that you worked on, one that may have been on the verge of failure, some difficulties that you had, and how you managed yourself through those difficulties. And to talk to the introspection part, what lessons did you learn from that experience, right? Because that's, even more beneficial than being successful, is that if you've had, difficulties and overcome them, and what you've learned from that, right? Things like how you work in the team, what's your approach to mentoring, both colleagues or maybe subordinates, right? And also one thing that, again, particularly in the professional roles, which I'm sure many of you are seeking, they're going to ask something about your ability to influence or persuade others. Okay, so just some things to keep in mind. Any questions about these?
No, I don't think so.
All right. Now, as I was saying earlier, you can differentiate yourself from the other candidates based on the quality of the questions that you ask, right, in the interview. And I put in two brief categories. One is you want to demonstrate, that you've done your research, that you're thoughtful about the organization, thoughtful about the opportunity. So this might be earlier on, you might ask, okay, so is this a new role, is this an existing role? Why was this role created, right? Your focus on achievement and results. What are your priorities for this role in the next 30, 60, 90 days? Okay. What does success look like down the road, a year from now, right? How would I be measured? How would success be measured? What is the impact that you're, looking for? It's a very service orientation. And, again, speaking to hiring managers like myself, that very much appeals to the hiring manager because you're in a position to provide a service, to provide a value. And, it's very broadly speaking, of course, but understanding that results orientation and that service orientation can help differentiate you, from the other candidates, right? Thinking about that and what you can contribute to in that role. And then asking the questions about what challenges are they facing, what difficulties are they encountering, and seeing if there are opportunities for you to provide, some support and assistance into what the core issue is that they're trying to address, right, within the organization and within this position. All right. Then I always ask these, and I find these very helpful at the end, towards the end of the interview, after you've talked about the role and talked about the impact, is trying to get some sense of how they view you as a candidate. So one of my favorite questions to ask near the end of the interview is, do you have any concerns about my fit for the role? Right. That's a very, direct way for you to assess how things are going and what any, if they're seeing you as a good candidate, or if they have some concerns about it, give you an opportunity to address it. Most of the time, I've been fortunate that the answer has been no, but there have been a couple of occasions where they said, yes, I do have some concerns, and they shared them with me, and I was able to respond to them, right, in terms of those concerns and saying how I would deal with them. And that made the difference in terms of getting the opportunity and not, to be quite honest with you. Mm-hmm. Sorry, question? Looks like Holly raised hand.
Yeah, so one question I have is when you're dealing with someone who's rushed and they have a hard stop and you don't really get to do your closing pitch, and it sort of feels like the interview goes really well, but you don't get to do these closing scope identifiers, right? What are the next steps? Do you have any concerns? What do you recommend in a scenario like that? Is it best to just address those in a thank you note, or thing where do you realize that you're not the one they want? Is it an indicator that you weren't the right person if they didn't even address those at the end?
Yeah, I mean, unfortunate. I'll be kind of honest and blunt with you. I mean, sure. If you have the interviewer at the end that is rushing you or not willing to, give a little bit more time, that unfortunately may be a signal that they have decided, throughout the course of the interview that you may not be the candidate that they're willing to, invest more investigation with, sadly, to speak. Because I find, in terms of if the interview is going well, both for yourself and for the hiring manager, they're usually, very gracious in terms of allowing you, to ask your additional questions or get clarifications and so forth. So that's just been the reality of my experience, I'm sorry to say.
And I think it's almost because they're also trying to sell themselves to you to make sure that you are convinced it's a good place. So I think it goes both ways. Probably, I think that's one of the reasons that probably happens.
Yeah, normally I'm able to do that closing sort of handoff conversation and what would next steps look like, or who else, kind of scope it. But the one that I did, number one, she was late, couldn't find my resume, and then it felt like it was a good fit, but then the end was very awkward. So I've never had that happen. So I was just curious, is there a way to continue the conversation, or is it best to sort of just assume that, yeah, she was kind of done?
Yeah. Well, I mean, you can make an attempt, and that is, and you can just, all you can do is ask, right? If, if there's an unfortunate, and then there's some, hard stop that is impacting, the hiring manager and so forth, all you can do is ask is, I'm sorry that we have run out of time. Can I follow up, maybe with an email in terms of some of the additional questions that I'd like to ask, and see if you're open to that? Or can we reschedule another, 15 minutes the next day, or something along those lines? All you can do is ask and see how they respond. All right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
But the other one, I don't want to skip over it. Getting to the heart of the matter, I always like to ask this question, and that is asking the leader of the team, what's your major worry? What is it that keeps you up at night? Because, if they answer that question honestly, that is the heart of the matter why, they are looking to fill this position with a candidate such as yourself. Right.
And Crystal has her hand up, so I think, Crystal, do you have a question?
I just wanted to say to Holly, my husband told me years and years ago, I had a very bad interview with the CFO at Rhino Records, and I thought I was a goner. It's like the third interview, and there was only one other interview, and you got the job.
Mm-hmm.
I went home. I was discouraged. I was very unhappy. My husband said, sometimes you can turn around a really bad interview with a really great thank you letter. Mm-hmm. So I sent the thank you letter, shot my shot, and what do you know? Not only did I get the next interview, the last interview, I got the job, and I stayed there for 8 years. So, here's the thing. It is a 50-50 chance. So don't send them the letter with all your final thoughts and absolutely nothing. You may not know if you'll ever you won't ever know if you turned it around, but send it out. And if they say no, it's okay. They were going to say no anyway.
Yeah. So yeah, you're right. Again, I'm sorry I didn't touch on that more, Crystal, because you're absolutely correct. One of the things I always do, in interviews is the thank you letter and the thank you note. But you also make sure within that thank you note, it does give you an opportunity. You don't want to be too salesy about it, but it does give you an opportunity to maybe touch and reinforce some points that you wanted to make in the interview that you maybe didn't get a chance to make. And I've done that a couple of times as well. So, it's definitely appropriate, and I definitely encourage you to do that. You do the thank you, you say, and regarding, the question raised, allow me to restate that, boom, 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 3-4 bullet points. These are the considerations I like to keep in mind, and these are the ways I think I can be of value and of benefit. And that's perfectly fine to do.
And I think we have one more from Shashri.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Hi, Bryon. I just want to follow up on the thank you note.
Yes.
So what's the amount of time do you have to wait before sending a thank you note? Do we send it on the same day, or do we follow up within the week?
I say ideally follow up within 24 hours is what I suggest, right? Make it timely, because things move quickly. If you could do it at the end of the same day, great. And if you're able to do it, like I said, within 24 hours in the interview, that's ideal.
Got it. Thank you.
I guess just in my own experience, when I was hiring for people, I will say that because a lot of times, we would be going through interviews, and then we'd have to submit our feedback on the candidate. And I wouldn't even do it immediately either, because I was trying to do it within the 24 hours. If in that much time, if I got a response back from the candidate saying, hey, thanks for the interview, great conversation, like that, I think played into my feedback for the candidate too. So just keep that in mind, is the more timely you make it, like if you wait a week, you probably forgot about who you were. So, right, like you want to not wait too long, I guess is what I'm saying.
24 hours is my guidance on that one. You definitely want to make it timely. And it does make a difference on the hiring committee, because it made a difference with me. In our most recent, I was sitting on a hiring committee, and one candidate sent a thank you note, one candidate did not. Mm-hmm. And we ended up hiring the candidate that didn't. Okay. I know we're running a little bit out of time. I don't know.
Yeah, we can just. I was just, so we're working on some stuff. I mean, again, thinking about the the right prompt and how to practice and all that. Like we're building some tools into the application. So this is an early preview. This is going to be coming out in the next couple of weeks. But along with resume, cover letter, doing outreach, thank you notes, etc. Like we're building an interview tool, which will hopefully help all of you guys as you go through the search. So some stuff that's coming pretty soon.
Okay.
I'm glad Crystal's very excited. And just just quick time check. We're about 10 minutes at the
Yes.
hour, so I know
Yeah.
we have a
So
couple more of those. So
we're
just
coming
need
down
people
to
know
it
that,
to the
yeah.
end. We should be still be okay and still allow
Okay.
for a few questions at the end. And one of the things, and again, I'm kind of reinforcing what I touched on in the previous session, is that hey, finding work is hard work. You've got to treat this job search journey like a full-time job, right? And this is what I mean by the get busy phase. And in my routine, I structured it, and we'll show another graphic that'll help reinforce this, is I have a very structured day, right, when I was doing the job search. And I decided to get up and at it early, sort of thing. And I had this structure and did it Monday, Friday, you're right, took the weekends off, right, took the evenings off, right, don't want to kill yourself, but you do want to keep yourself organized and keep yourself structured and making sure those key high value tasks are being done, each day. Things like researching the companies that you're looking for, revising your job search plan, because each interaction you learn a little bit more in terms of how you want to tailor things like your elevator pitch or your brag sheet or your target opportunities, right? Stay up on current events because that's going to help you when you're in those networking type situations and so forth, right? Get exercise, fresh air, activity, because that's always just going to help you with your energy level and help you with you maintaining kind of a mental balance, as I like to say. So, submitting applications, but strategic ones, right? So I really do counsel a lot of my colleagues around, it's not a volume game, okay, in terms of submitting applications. It really is a strategic game in terms of where you submit, when you submit, and who you know before you submit, right? I really want to kind of reinforce that. Resume revisions and visions, as I said, for each opportunity, you are going to tweak, you are going to tailor your resume to make sure it is, matching as best you can to that particular opportunity. Reordering, rephrasing, changing what you highlight and so forth. Really, it's very worthwhile to invest the time. Informational interviews, I think I've mentioned that before in previous time. These are ones that are kind of non-threatening, really just conversations that you have as part of your networking activity in terms of learning from others, in terms of folks that you might be interested in terms of their positions, asking them, seeking their guidance, right, and seeking their counsel, because people, are always very, happy to talk about themselves and talk about their journey and seeing what you can learn, and they can help, help develop referrals to you, to other colleagues who ultimately, and this is what I've been my experience, is that chain of referrals ultimately, leads you to the opportunities that are inside that hidden market, as I was saying before, right? Attending job clubs, interview preparation, doing all your follow-ups in terms of connections, introductions, thank yous, etc.
There's a question, Bryon. Sorry to interrupt,
Sure.
but I think from Holly.
Oh, is there
Sorry,
a best day to submit apps? It's kind of funny. You're not the first person to ask that question. I chuckle a little bit in that they saying, submitting it in the morning and the timing. I am not that restrictive in terms of suggesting that. I mean, I do it whenever I'm done and whether I'm convenient. I really don't think the systems have a preference for a particular day or a particular time. And the point is, the difference is that if you're submitting an app with a connection, that really, again, reinforces the difference in that I'll just give you a short example. I, identified my target UT, okay? I would regularly review their job boards and so forth, identify the opportunities. I would use LinkedIn and other tools to try to target who I think the hiring manager is for that particular opportunity, right? And I try to see if I have any connections within the organization. I would leverage them. I was fortunate that I knew a couple of people at UT that were able to refer me to others and so forth. And I would use them to do an introduction on LinkedIn to connect with the people. And then when I submitted my application to the role, I would then send a connection invite to that person saying, I've recently submitted an application to your organization. I'm really interested and excited about the opportunity. I hope you give my application full consideration. In the meantime, let's connect on LinkedIn. All right. And I would do that consistently for any of the, the opportunities that I submitted. So that's why time of day didn't matter.
I was laughing for a couple of reasons. I was laughing just like Bryon was laughing about the timing question. I was also chuckling about, with Crystal's comments. But as a hiring manager, I don't think I ever, even when I was looking in the ATS, I don't think I ever spent time looking at what time or which order or which day, etc. it was that I received the application. Now, I will say that there are two things that matter. The thank you note, please don't send it at like 10 p.m. at night. Like, try to be respectful of, you want to send it during business hours. And if it's like after 5, use the schedule email function to send it like the next day. So be mindful of that. The one area where I will say that timing is really important is if you have an opportunity to schedule an interview, try to do it in the first half of the day. Because people, once they get busy with their day, and if you're at like a 3 p.m. interview, they've had a rough day, like other stuff has happened, you don't want to be a 3 p.m. interview. If you can get a morning interview with people and you have an option to talk to the hiring manager, talk to the individual, get yourself scheduled earlier in the day before they get busy with other stuff. Yes. Right? I think that more than anything, that's the most important piece of timing feedback that I can give you is definitely keep that in mind. Nothing else really matters from a timing perspective, at least nothing that I've experienced.
The one I did that didn't end so smooth was at 4 o'clock. So,
there you go. That person's already trying to get out of the office, go to pick up their kids.
I give her some grace.
So that's I think the one area where I always try to be very, very thoughtful. Is try to do those in the morning because everyone wants to be done and get out of there and like stuff could have happened in the day which they had a bad day and now they're taking it out on you and that sours their experience with you and it wasn't your fault.
Right.
It was actually 2 p.m. her time. But I did have a quick question.
Sure, go ahead.
That was aside from what I put in the chat, and it was about referrals because I feel like I haven't quite, and I don't know if others on the call feel this way, cracked the code. I have a massive network, like 1,400 connections. Great. However, somehow, never when I'm applying for a job are they a first connection. It just seems like it is never the case. And then if they are a first connection, they're not someone I know. So I'm like, well, I accept lots of things. I don't know you. So what I've found has worked for me the most is like, if I have a first person, I'm already applying for the job, but then I'm reaching out and saying, hey, I applied for this interesting job. Would love to learn about the culture. Sometimes we have a coffee chat. Offer to do a referral. But I'm already in the system having done a referral. I'm already in the system having applied. And so I'm curious is that just bad business because it doesn't, like they're sending a note to the hiring person, but I'm not getting a referral link.
I'm not sure I fully follow you.
Basically, instead of getting a referral, like,
Holly, I don't think every company has the concept of I am an employee at the company and I will send out a referral link for someone that wants to apply so that it tags it. A lot of times it is just, hey, hiring manager, hey, hey, Bryon, Holly reached out to me, just let you know that like she and I touched base. I think she's interested in the role. That happens all the time. That's not unusual.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because I feel like that's what I have a lot more of is just people behind the scenes that are like saying.
I think that it's not unusual at all, and I think she mentioned this in the chat. But I'll include a link to part 1 in the email that we send out. But we covered this topic in a lot of depth in the last conversation around how to search and how to engage and all that. There's some good tidbits in there. I highly recommend, even if you watch it at like 1.5x, you'll find some good stuff in there. And I just say that because we're coming up on time, so I don't not to rush you, but there's some good information in that one if you get a chance to watch that.
Yeah, but definitely use your direct connections to introduce or connect you with their second level and third level. That's the basic. That's a basic approach because sounds like you've got a good network at your first level. So now because the reality is you need to leverage that to get to the second and the third level, and then make them direct connections and grow from there.
I think Shrey has a question and Kelly has a question.
Yeah, I know we are up on time, but
Mhm.
still, I just wanted to ask this question because I feel like it's very important. I know a lot of people say that quality is more important than quantity when it comes to applications, and there is no specific number per day that you have to apply. But I really wanted to see if you have any benchmark number in your mind, like how many applications should you apply every single day. I know applying for jobs is a full-time job. So first, let's say if you apply 8 hours a day, how many applications is good enough applications?
Okay. And again, I really want to pivot your perspective in terms of having a hard number saying you should be applying, 5 applications per day or something like that. Because to be quite honest with you, that's crazy from my perspective, right? I, in terms of my job search, quality applications with the connections, making them strategic, doing the research, doing the networking, I typically see 3 to 5 applications a week in terms of submission. If you're doing quality applications versus, the crazy quantity of spraying.
I have seen people who apply 50 applications per day. So
I know that's crazy. It's just going to burn you out, and it's just going to frustrate you. That's why I really, really implore you not to get caught into that cycle of blind applications and some kind of metric, a number in times you want a day. I really want to focus and encourage you to strategically apply to positions, because that's where you're going to
person that
get.
wins the race is not going to be the one that applies the most number of times.
Yeah.
I can all guarantee you that.
That's
no
not an
question.
award you want to have. Okay, really.
yeah.
And
Got it.
Kelly, I
Yourself.
think, had a question.
Yeah,
Go for
this
it.
is more about the presentation. I missed the first one. You said I think someone mentioned early on that the first part 1 would be available by an email.
Yes, sir. So what I'll do is once we're done here, it'll probably be sometime tomorrow, but I will send out an email with the links to both the first part and the second part, so you can definitely go through it. It's on YouTube. I just have to. I'll send the link to you.
It is on YouTube. Okay, I'll just look there, but I'll look forward to the email as well. Thank you for your time. Really valuable information. Much appreciated.
Great. I'm glad you were here. I'm glad it helped.
I'm glad I was able to be here.
Great. Yeah,
I think we have
I
a
know-
couple more, but we're almost at the end, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, I know that we're out of time. I don't know if we wanted to touch on, this is just a graphic with, and I have to tip my hat to Sneh for putting it together, reinforcing the importance of planning your week, right? And doing a measured but focused approach in terms of things that you're trying to accomplish, right? And keeping your metrics low and reasonable. Don't want you to burn yourself out in terms of this process. All right. And I think, this one, and again, this is here for you to reference, and it'll be in the slides. I won't spend a lot of time with it. But if you get to this point, just a few tips in terms of negotiation strategy and so forth, right? And I'll just highlight the bullet points in terms of 1, never reveal your current salary or expectation during the interview process. That should only come up after an offer is made, okay? Very, very, very important, because you undermine your position if you do that. And 2, or thirdly, about do not accept an offer immediately. At least take 1 day to consider it, okay? And in terms of, you want to make sure all your needs are being met, and I just kind of outline them, so forth. So, employers are very, very reasonable. They're not going to penalize you if you say you'd like a day or a weekend or something like that to think about the offer, so that it's well thoughtful. And it may identify some things that you want to negotiate or discuss with the employer in terms of, the next day, that kind of thing. So don't want to put yourself in a box. Give yourself that breathing room is kind of my message there. All righty.
I think we might have a comment from Crystal.
Okay.
I was just going to ask, so I've heard this before, but I've been in situations where it's clear they're not taking the general, I'm comfortable with the range answer, or they just didn't post a range, so you don't know what it is. I have generally had a range in mind. I never give them a hard number. I always give them a range, and it's usually a 5,000 to 8,000 differential between the top and the low. Is that okay? What do you think about that approach? If they're backing you into it.
Yeah, I mean, if you feel really pressured, and the different diversion techniques that I've used, sort of thing. And one, I always go in terms of, my previous job. It's not, compensation is not really relevant to this particular opportunity because I know this is unique and I know this is different. That's one diversion. The other one is I sometimes say, well, I expect, that you would be making a fair, industry standard type offer for this particular role. And my sense is that you, as the hiring manager, probably have the best insight in terms of what the appropriate level of role. And I will be open to consider any reasonable offer for this position. That's another way that I use to divert it. And finally, if you feel that you're pressured, then I would say my expectation is that based on industry standards and based on the research that I have done, I expect this role to maybe start at a compensation level of X. And I look forward to, given my relative skills and the value that I bring, I look forward to an offer that would be somewhere in excess of that. So I don't put a top end on it.
Yeah, and Holly pointed out something else, that more and more on these applications that you fill out online, because even if you reach the hiring manager, they will say, that's fine, I got your resume, I still need you to fill out the application. And the applications really want you to put in a number, not a range. I've tried that. They won't let you leave it blank because it's always a required field.
Well, you know what I do in those situations, in those applications? I put in $999, $999, and 99 cents. is what I put in, so that it gets through the system, because it is a number and it is in there, sort of thing. That's how I take care of those situations. And it was kind of funny when the recruiter saw my app. She said to me, "So you're looking for about $1 million for this role?" No, that is just my default number at this point.
I didn't think about doing that. I've done silly things like when they've insisted on a photo with the application, I've given them pictures of my dog, because you'll find out what I look like when you call me for an interview.
Yeah. No, it doesn't box you out. It just allows you to answer your question, Holly. It allows the system to go through because you've put a number in there, right? And then, like I said, when it came up in the interview question, I just said, that is just my default number in terms of the app. I'm very open to discussing, should we reach that point, any reasonable offer, for this particular role relative to industry standards and compensation, that sort of thing. Okay. Are there any other lingering questions I can address before we're adjourned?
Holly has her hand up, but I think you already asked. Do you have another question, Holly, or you?
I mean, that was the question about that, and I'm forgetting what my other question was. I think it was about just talk.
Okay.
Sorry.
No problem. No problem. Well, I hope this has been helpful for folks. I'm, really encouraged, and feel free. I don't know if my email has been shared or if it's on the website or anything like that. If people have some follow-on questions or something like that, I'm happy to, respond to your emails. I'm in LinkedIn, and actually, I'm on LinkedIn, and my email address is in my about information there. So you can always connect with me on LinkedIn or connect with me directly via email.
Include it in the email we'll send out once it's done.
Yeah.
So, yeah. But no, thank you, Bryon, so much for taking the time. This was, again, very helpful. I love the questions because I always learn something new too. So it's very, very helpful.
It's great.
And thank you all for joining.
Yes.
Yeah. And we'll send out the links to the recordings. And if you have people that that would benefit from watching, feel free to share. I mean, we're not hiding anything, and it's publicly available. It'll be on YouTube. So.
Yeah, absolutely. I thank everybody's participation. It was great, and I wish you all, best and much success in your search. All right.
Thanks so much.
Yeah.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Bryon. Take care.
Thanks.
See you. Bye.
Good night.